Good afternoon, everybody. It's 12:30. It's lunchtime here in Missouri. So we're going to talk about exercise. I may get some flack from my exercise physical fitness people, but I'm going to show you why exercise is not going to help you lose weight. So we're still continuing a deep dive into the obesity code from Dr. Jason Fung, a Canadian nephrologist, kidney specialist, who works with people who want to lose weight what he thinks is the correct way. And we got frustrated because of the fact that he couldn't really cure type 2 diabetes with meds. So he decided to embark on a strategy to cure type 2 diabetes in a different way without medications. So we've been talking about the hormonal theory of obesity and weight gain. And I told you this week we would delve into exercise. So the general thinking is this: obesity has to do with a caloric imbalance. So calories in versus calories out. And so if it's not the calories in, so reducing your calories in doesn't work, then it must be the calories out. So um, you're too lazy, you're not doing enough, you're not moving enough. Okay, well, I am talking to you in my pajamas, which is the same thing I wore for teaching both my anatomy and physiology classes yesterday morning. Okay, so I haven't been running and jogging and lifting weights today. So I'm just as, I guess, lazy as every other American potentially. So, and I haven't eaten anything. So I haven't eaten anything since about 7 o'clock last night. Okay, so calories out is really termed total energy expenditure by your body. So it consists of your basal metabolic rate plus the voluntary expenditure. So we'll call that exercise. So total energy index expenditure from your body would be basal metabolic rate, which is what keeps you alive, plus exercise. So there's housekeeping tasks such as breathing, maintaining your body temperature, keeping your heart beating, maintenance of vital organs. That's basal metabolic rate. So it's hard to measure total energy expenditure. So everybody assumes that basal metabolic rate stays constant. So the only variable would be exercise. And so people start assuming that total energy expenditure, the calories that are used, is the same as exercise. The problem is you're a human being. So your basal metabolic rate does not stay stable. So your basal metabolic rate, based on your human physiology, can go up or down as much as 50%. So if you decrease your caloric intake, your basal metabolic rate will go down. Let's say you eat half of what you used to, your basal metabolic rate will go down by half. Your body is situated and physiologically designed to survive. So if you're not putting the energy in, then your body's going to reduce the energy that you're using. That's why you start feeling yucky and cold and tired, and all you can think about is food. So we've been told to decrease our caloric intake, eat less, and move more. That's been going on since the 1960s, pretty much. So basically, you're being told, okay, burn off the calories you take in, and therefore you're going to lose weight. So if that was true, you would think if somebody exercises more, then obesity would decrease over time. So that sounds reasonable. Okay, so for the vast majority of human history, the idea of exercising the way we do, going to a gym or this and doing jogging, all that was just not something people did. We were more physically active. So there are health benefits to running and doing aerobics and lifting weights, but nobody really paid attention to that until about the 1960s. And then in the 1960s, there wasn't a huge obesity epidemic and type 2 diabetes epidemic and metabolic syndrome epidemic and insulin resistance epidemic. So in 1966, the U.S. government, in their total wisdom, started to advocate that increasing physical activity was one of the best ways to lose weight. And so over the last 5 decades, we've seen all these gyms, fitness centers, Gold's Gym, that, LA Fitness, etc., etc. Aerobic studios spread out all over the place. Okay. Jim Fixx was the running guy. It's called the Complete Book of Running. He died of a heart attack in age 52. That didn't seem to hinder anybody thinking that running was good for them. Now, the people that I know that have running their aerobics is the on that going outside and running usually have knee problems by their 50s and 60s, so they're having all kinds of knee surgery. Okay, so people started incorporating physical activity into their leisure time. It didn't matter what they were doing during the day. So if exercise was an important component to fight obesity, if we increase our exercise, we should see obesity rates decrease, just the way the reducing your calories and moving more says, which is what we've been taught. And I've proved to you it doesn't work. So here's the problem. As more and more people became more physically fit, there was no effect on obesity rates at all. So the truth comes out. Obesity increased even as we sweated and exercised and ran and aerobicized and did all those things that became health training videos you could do at home, Jane Fonda, etc. Okay, so there's an 82% correlation between exercise and obesity. So as we increased physical activity and exercise in this country, the obesity rates increased. So that doesn't mean that exercise causes obesity. That doesn't make sense. So more than likely, as we become heavier, we increase exercise in order to lose the weight, but that doesn't work. The ultimate proof is really personal experience. Any of you that have tried to lose weight by reducing calories and increasing exercise know that. You feel horrible, and it doesn't work. So there's a paper that looked at a 10-year physical activity and obesity in the United States that looked at that. So if you increase physical activity, you should have decreasing obesity rates. Okay, so this is a paper, NHANES data. There's a general increase in physical activity in the adult population in the U.S. And there's certain areas of the country that have done really well at that. So you would expect a decreasing prevalence of obesity. Well, here's what they found. Whether physical activity increases or decreases, there's virtually no relationship to the prevalence of obesity in the United States. There's no measurable reduction in obesity from the increased exercise. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It means nothing. It's inconsequential. So higher levels of physical activity in a 10-year study did not reduce obesity rates. So what about children? So we have an epidemic of childhood obesity. Is that because they're all lazy and looking at their phones and their iPads, etc., and watching Netflix? So there's an article from 2013 called The Association Between Objectively Measured Sedentary Behavior and Body Mass Index in Preschool Children. They looked at children aged 3 to 5, had their activity measured by an accelerometry unit, and the conclusion was, regardless of cut points used, accelerometry-derived sedentary behavior was not independently associated with a BMI score in 2 independent samples of preschool children. So what that means is there's no association between activity and obesity. Okay, so let's look at primitive societies. Okay, so this is the CARS hypothesis, which means primitive societies used to walk everywhere. Now we drive. Okay, so therefore we're not eating a lot, but they were burning a lot of calories by inadvertent exercise, usually looking for food. Okay, so this sounds pretty reasonable. The problem is it just isn't true. So researcher Herman Poncer found one such modern-day hunter-gatherer society called the Hadza in Tanzania. And they travel typically 15 to 20 miles a day to gather food. And with that activity, you would assume that their daily energy expenditure is much higher than, let's say, a United States office worker. Okay, so his findings, published in the New York Times, His quote is, "We found that despite all this physical activity, the number of calories that the Hadza burned per day was indistinguishable from that of typical adults in Europe and the United States." So they ran a number of statistical measures accounting for body mass, lean body mass, age, sex, and fat mass, and still found no difference in daily energy expenditure between this primitive group and their Western counterparts. So no difference in daily calories burned between the walking all day hunter-gatherers and people that sit around doing nothing, which is what I've been doing the past 2 days when I get my students ready for their test. There's not a whole lot of physical activity involved in getting students taught and ready for tests. Tests start Friday. Okay, so the reason for this is compensation. So the Hadza, the primitive society, who were walking and working all day, reduced their physical activity when it wasn't necessary. And then those of us that are sitting around all day tend to increase our activity when we're not working. So if you have a sedentary job, you're more active because you've been sitting all day. That happens to me at 3 o'clock when I go out to the school. I get more active. I go shopping. I do this. I walk the dog, blah, blah, blah. So if you've been walking all day gathering bugs and roots, the last thing you want to do is go for a run at the end of the day. But if you've been sitting around all day in meetings, which is horrifying, then maybe a run after work sounds pretty good, or a walk, or whatever your physical activity capability is. So there's no measurable association between obesity and physical activity. So I'm not saying that exercise isn't good for you, okay? It just doesn't work for weight loss. So those of you that are eating less calories and exercising your little heinies off are not going to sustainably lose weight. It just doesn't work, okay? So we only believe that exercise is effective for weight loss because it's been drilled into our heads since the 1960s. The relationship does not exist at all. So somebody thought it sounded good. It does sound good. Exercise more, eat less. It just doesn't work. The evidence does not back up that relationship. Okay? So, if the conventional view of obesity, diet, and exercise are commonly prescribed treatments for obesity, they're considered equally important. So important. So like 50% is diet, 50% is your exercise. That's a prescription that you get from a nutritionist, a physician, whatever. But there's a simple calculation that proves that wrong. First of all, your basal metabolic rate changes. So the BMR is about 12 to 15 calories per pound. So however much you weigh, multiply that by 12 to 15 calories, and that's how much calories you need to be alive and be physiologic and be homeostatic. Okay, so let's say that you're bedbound. You're lying in bed all day. Caloric needs are about 1.2 times basal energy expenditure. So basal metabolic rate, basal energy expenditure. So 1.2 times. So for a 140-pound person, the daily caloric need would be 2,200 to 2,500 calories per day if you're bedridden, just to remain alive. Physiologic homeostasis. So let's say you start walking maybe 2 miles an hour for 45 minutes every day. So that 45 minutes of 2 miles an hour walking would burn 104 calories, which is less than 4% of your basal energy expenditure. And that's assuming you do that every day. So let's say you get more vigorous and you walk faster. So you can get to 6%, maybe 8% of basal energy expenditure, but not a big chunk. Most of your body's energy expenditure is used to keep you alive. So the vast majority, 96% of caloric intake, is used to heat your body and then keep your heart beating, keep your lungs breathing, digesting foods, keeping your brain working, liver and kidney function, all the things that you have to do to remain a living person. So diet and exercise are not a 50-50 deal, okay? So diet may do all the work, may deserve all the attention. Focusing too much on attention on exercise simply distracts you from paying attention to your diet. And it's not reduction in calories. We're heading toward the reason for obesity. So we've been talking about hormones and hormonal reason for obesity, and the thing that causes obesity is insulin. So, hear me loud and clear. Exercise is good for you. Okay? You get many benefits. You get muscle tone increase, you get increased insulin sensitivity so that you're in your muscles, and of course when you're working out and doing exercise, by the time you get to a certain point, you're using glucose that's stored in your muscles for your energy. You get increased strength, you increase your bone density. But weight loss is not one of the benefits of exercise. Just don't expect that you're going to lose weight from regular exercise. Do it anyway because it's good for you, but weight loss isn't one of the benefits. So really, you need to focus on 95% of the equation, which when we were talking about weight loss and diabetes, we need to focus on the diet part. Okay? Dr. Fung uses a baseball analogy. He says, consider that bunting is an important part of the game of baseball. A well laid out bunt can change a game, but it's only important for a small amount of the game. Not everybody that comes up is bunting. That would be stupid. That wouldn't make sense. So you got hitting, you got pitching, you got fielding, all that has to go together. But if you spent 50% of your time practicing on how to bunt as a baseball player, you wouldn't be very effective because you're paying no attention to fielding and hitting in general. So if bunting is a small percent of the game, you should spend a small percent of your time training and learning how to bunt. So the same is true of weight loss. 95% of weight loss is diet and 5% is exercise. And stated another way, 95% of weight loss is hormone balance. Okay, so exercise is important. It's just not equally as important as diet. So for weight loss, you have to focus on the diet and not reduction in calories. It's more what you eat and when you eat. Okay? Okay, so what about the idea that now we're lazier than we were? We talk about the hunter-gatherers, etc. And now we sit around all day doing nothing and we got fat, blah, blah, blah. So there's an article called Physical Activity Energy Expenditure has not declined since the 1980s and matches energy expenditures of wild mammals. So people keep looking at this. Physical activity energy expenditure in this study was measured using doubly labeled water. It was a Northern European population. Values were calculated from the 1980s, before obesity became a huge deal, up to the mid-2000s. So if anything, physical activity in our society has not decreased since the 1980s, but it's actually increased. Okay? And they went even further in this study. They calculated the predicted energy expenditure for a wild mammal, which is predominantly based on body mass and ambient temperature, and compared to wild mammals, human beings of 2013 is not less physically active than its wild mammalian cousins, such as cougars and foxes and caribou. And their conclusion, quote, as physical activity expenditure has not declined over the same period that obesity rates have increased dramatically, and daily energy expenditure of modern man is in line with energy expenditure in wild mammals, it is unlikely that decreased energy expenditure has fueled the obesity epidemic. Yet with all that evidence around, all the contrary evidence, the nutritional authorities and physicians and medical people continue to tell you that exercise is the key to weight loss. Eat less, move more. Doesn't work. So exercise is not nearly as effective as we think due to the compensatory mechanisms. Okay? So compensation is the tendency to compensate for vigorous activity in daily activities by reducing activity in your spare time. So most of us already know that. If you're running, burning the candle at both ends during the day, The last thing you're going to do, I called it abdicating the throne. When I was practicing medicine, going to labor and deliveries and ERs, 12, 13 hours at a time, having to get up in the middle of the night. When I came home, I wanted to abdicate the throne. I wanted to not be in charge of anything. I wanted to relax and read the newspaper and do nothing. Okay? Here's another study, physical activity total and regional obesity dose response considerations. So most studies that lasted over 25 weeks, the weight loss was only 30% of expected weight loss. Another study showing the same, called changes in weight, waist circumference, and compensatory response with different doses of exercise. In a more recent study, aerobic exercise alone results in clinically significant weight loss. You might hold some hope that exercise is going to help you lose weight. They randomly assigned patients to exercise, so 600 calories per session burned 5 days a week for 10 months. Those who exercised lost an extra 10 pounds. So there you go, voila, exercise helps with weight loss. However, if you calculate the caloric loss, you find 600 calories burned per session times 5 days a week times 10 months divided by 3,600 calories per pound. You would expect a 35-pound weight loss, not a 10-pound. So your weight loss with exercise is about 30%. Also true for children. Okay. There is not really that much difference in all the studies I'm sitting here looking at. At the most, you're going to lose maybe 30% of what you think you're going to lose. And then the kicker is, how do you keep it off? Well, 95% is diet, what you're eating, and when you're eating. So we will continue to explore this. We're about 23 minutes into this class. So we're going to continue to go on through exercise physiology. And again, I'm not knocking exercise, so Tammy Crabtree's probably going to gripe at me, my physical fitness guru. So exercise is her thing, but it ain't for weight loss. It's just for your health. And listen to her. She's right. She knows what she's talking about. Hi, Eileen. Thanks for joining us. I will talk to you Friday. I'm going to teach tomorrow. I'm trying different time periods for class. So this one's during lunch hour. I keep looking at Facebook algorithms and when you should do this, blah, blah, blah. So I did 9:30 for almost a year, 9:30 in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I'm just playing around with times. And most people watch this later. They're not live anyway. So I will talk to you on Friday at some time between 9 a.m. and probably 6 p.m. Central Time here in Boonville. And you all have a great afternoon. It's beautiful here. It's sunny. It's nice weather. So have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.